Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Teams for Business podcast. I'm your host, Kywin.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Jackie.
Today, we'll be talking about Nvidia and the AI revolution kind of going on right now. So, Nvidia has been growing for a while. We've discussed it actually on this podcast in the past, but after recording record earnings this past week, I think it's only right we talk about it again. On Friday, Nvidia's valuation briefly catapulted to two trillion dollars, becoming only the third company ever to hit that milestone behind Apple and Microsoft. And this latest achievement comes after the company earlier this month also surpassed Amazon and Alphabet or Google in market value. And so when you think about like the super huge companies like Amazon, Apple, it's crazy to think that Nvidia in like 1 year it's basically surpassed them and it's become the third most valuable company in the world. And what how they've been able to do that is CEO Jensen Huang, he's basically have made a pattern of positioning Nvidia in front of every big tech trend. In 2012, a small group of researchers released a groundbreaking image recognition system called AlexNet that used GPUs instead of CPUs to kind of crunch the code and launched a new era of deep learning. And then Huang was able to use this to chase the AI full time and make that's what they centered their business around. And yeah, that's how Nvidia was in the perfect position to start selling its AI focused GPUs to hungry tech companies, and it has been growing for the past couple years, like at a historic rate. So a bit of a general question first. So what is behind Nvidia's historical growth as a whole? And do you guys think it would continue to move up and even possibly eventually surpass the top two companies in Apple and Microsoft?
Yeah, so
Oops.
I think
Oh,
so I think a lot of like what's happening with Nvidia is like you said, like AI and like that boom we're experiencing. And I think like seeing the record earnings and like having like all like the big news companies like talk about it, I thought was very fascinating. But at the same time, like while like there's like this AI boom, there's also like a lot of analysts that are saying like just because it's going up now doesn't mean like it's actually like going to continue going up. And or like I think like one of the like OpenAI, like the CEO was like, oh, like people are effectively begging for AI to be disappointing in the future. And I think like for Nvidia's like current stock, like that's saying like people have very, very high expectations basically for this company. And I think while it's not going to like disappoint in a way, I do think that like it's not going to be able to like sustain such a high like level, if that makes sense. I think that like goes with any stock. There's always like, like a lot of I guess virality around it and then it kind of dies down a little bit. Like in other words, I don't think like Nvidia is going to be like continuously this very like hot stock.
yeah. I think what currently like contributes to Nvidia's like historical growth is that definitely the AI, like the growth of AI, it's been really fast over the past 2 years. Ever since the development of ChatGPT, we've seen a lot of AI things happen, and since Nvidia is the leader in that AI industry with their GPUs, their their growth pretty much corresponds with wherever the AI sector is like going to. And we first need to define what GPUs are because GPUs and CPUs are very different. But GPUs like are basically graphic processing units and they perform calculations more effectively and more energy effective compared to like CPUs, which is why they're in such high demand for all these different AI things right now. And I feel like it is completely possible for Nvidia to actually surpass Apple and like Google, but I'm not sure if this is in for the long term. Like they could like just like we saw, like it could go above like 2 trillion now, but then it could go down because we haven't really seen what regulations are being put on AI yet. AI at the end of the day can be used for a lot of different things, and maybe those aren't really the right things. Like I feel like there's a lot of hype around Nvidia right now that could temporarily launch them to like a big like stardom, potentially over Apple and like Google. And some projections have thought that this is like within the next 2 years, but I do think that like it's I don't think that Nvidia can sustain this in the long term just because we don't AI is still relatively new. It's really hard to predict. So I'm not entirely sure about like my projections for that yet.
I think it's kind of hard to tell just because I think right now we might be in like a tech tech fueled kind of bubble with what's going on because with Nvidia's earnings, because they're kind of dominating the market, you would think that with their positive earnings and their growth, their competitors will kind of go down a little bit. But what happened on Thursday after they reported earnings was AMD and other competitors, their stocks also soared. Just crazy because the AI that just means like the AI market is just dominating as a whole right now. But this kind of reminds me of the pandemic when everything was going up for a period of time, but then it just came crashing down. So I do think that the growth that they're seeing is just super fueled by this kind of mania around the AI industry and people like wanting to get into this, but we have to be like wary of like at any moment the bubble could pop. I feel like especially with how much growth is going on right now. So just tying into that, I guess would you guys consider buying Nvidia stock at its current price right now?
So I generally am like a little bit more conservative with things. And like keeping that into account, I feel like I personally would not, or well, maybe I would like right now, but I don't think it'd be like a very like big like long-term thing for me. And like while it's like going up like incredible amount, just like for some numbers, it went up 239% in 2023, and then it's gone over like 45% in 2024 alone, and we're still in February. And so obviously like it has shown like even like the past, like many years, like if you were in like if you invested in 2005, you'd be like a lot richer right now. But still like obviously like historically it's shown to be a very good company, but at the same time, I feel like there's like we said, like the whole concept with AI, like I like the company, just this thing with AI, like you never know like where it's going to go, and you don't really know like as Kevin said, like you don't know when this bubble is going to pop. And I think like if you're able to like I guess like get out before that happens, or like if you're able to like see like or like pull yourself back before you're like, okay, this is like I already made enough. Like if you're able to do that, then I think yes. But at the same time, I feel like it's even though it's been going up a lot, there's just a lot that's like warning bells in my head.
Yeah, I was among the lucky ones who actually bought Nvidia when it was at down like at $275, and I obviously made a lot of profit off of that. But right now I do kind of think that it is a little bit too late to get into Nvidia because like it's like really highly priced and it's been going up so much. And obviously I think this year and next year is going to be a pivotal year in terms of what's going to happen in AI. And if you do decide to buy it right now, it's pretty much impossible to predict when it's going to sell and when it's going to like have like a I guess like just like Ivan said, when that bubble is going to pop. And if that bubble pops, what impact would that have on just the AI industry and also NVIDIA as a whole, being NVIDIA as a leader? So I just think that because AI is so like hard to predict, even though like a lot of people are just like hyping it up, that are a little bit like covering up like the potential for like misuse of AI, I think it is. I think it's dangerous to invest in it right now, and also due to this high price, I do think it's a investors have to be a little bit wary about it.
Yeah, exactly. I actually personally own some Nvidia stock, but after their earnings, I sold about half of my total shares just because I wanted to get out of. Well, I want once you make some profit, you should probably like get out a little bit, especially if you don't know what's going to happen in the future. As tying into that kind of is like Nvidia could face some challenges in the upcoming years that could detract away from its potential growth. So, what do you guys think are some barriers that they could possibly face in the upcoming years?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, or well, at least some of it, is a little bit outside of the world of, finance and stocks. I think one big thing is like politics and like the geopolitics of everything. And I think there's a lot of like well, there's a few things. So legislation as a whole. And so like with that, there's like regulations that's just like imposed by the US government, like as a whole. Like there was like an AI act that was passed by Biden, like I think it was an executive order. But like the US as a whole is like pretty behind in terms of regulations. So I think definitely looking into the future, we will have regulations on AI. And even though we can't really exactly say like what regulations they will be, like or like how impactful they're gonna have on Nvidia, like specifically, I think that is definitely something to keep in mind. But another thing is that it's not just the United States. There's like so much that was like international, and the U.S. and China tech war, and that's a lot of what is happening. And so like if somebody decides like something happens there, like they could face a lot of like regulations, and they could have a lot of um like issues going on with that, and all like the things that they sell, like they wouldn't be able to have as high as the earnings that they have currently. And so definitely I think that is something to consider, and that's totally outside this world of like finance and just looking at like, for example, like price to earnings ratio, like it's that's so much beyond that. And I think like that is something that investors really have to keep in mind.
Well, I also think it's not just the tech war between US and China. It's just also like the trade war in general and like the politics because like TSMC, we discussed this on the episode prior in Nvidia, but TSMC is Nvidia's like primary like I guess like collaborator. They provide Nvidia with all their chips that they can use to like make that output, and then once Nvidia makes that, they can like get obviously sell it to whoever they want in terms of like AI. But TSMC is based in Taiwan, and it is pretty much at the center of the geopolitical tensions between the US and China. So that's definitely gonna play a really like big like influence. If like those like political tensions are escalated, it could definitely play a big um it could be like a little bit of an obstacle for Nvidia in terms of its like future profitability. So that also definitely one thing to consider. In terms of more on the like the business front, I do feel like Nvidia will have to face increased competition and potentially in the GPU market in the future. Like even though Nvidia is like currently the leader, we've seen like Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, they've all been getting into AI in some way or another. Like Microsoft has their Copilot, and Google is also developing a lot of different AI services. So a lot of these other companies want to really have a share in this like market soon. It feels like Nvidia is like kind of like a monopoly in this GPU market, but I think that's really easy to be changed. Like with the development of AI, there's going to be a lot of different players that come in the future, and also based on just Nvidia's like speed in doing all of this GPUs, there's a lot of price pressure on that too, because since more GPUs are being sold and it's causing a lot of downward pressure on GPU prices, which also raises a lot of questions about Nvidia's like long-term sustainability, and just also contributing to long-term is just like AI in general, because like we don't know what's going to go on with AI in the future. There could be regulations, and there's a lot of things that we can't predict right now.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely agree. I think that in terms of like what's going on with China, that is definitely a concern because in the past, in the quarter that ended on um late January, I think their revenue fell 2 billion from the previous quarter just because the US basically has been restricting like chip supplies to exporting like to China. I think so there haven't been like US government approval to resume these exports. So I think Nvidia has to find a way to kind of combat that. But like I guess even despite these challenges, Nvidia is still kind of like growing like crazy right now. They're owning like 70% of like the chip market. So they're definitely the major player, but um I do think there's going to be more competition in the future. And yeah, last question going into is going to be like, you think is FOMO playing a part in to investors just buying into Nvidia and this AI market as a whole? Because I guess everyone wants to buy into like whatever's new, whatever's hot in the market right now. I guess right now is definitely Nvidia and AI.
I think that there definitely is like this aspect of FOMO in it. Like there's just like there's so much talk about AI and Nvidia as a whole, and a lot of the investors are like, wow, like it's going so well. And I think that like everyone's just trying to get a piece of it. And I like definitely just because like it's so hot, like every news channel is talking about it, every like finance thing is talking about it. And I think just because of that, I think there's just a lot of FOMO of like, okay, if it's so hot, I also want to be part of this trend. And I think like while that is like it makes sense from like a human perspective, at the same time, that's kind of like where, like this whole bubble thing starts. And so I think like because of that, there's also like this sense of like, okay, just I think there needs to be like more care in it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like there's a lot of hype following AI as ChatGPT launched, and obviously Nvidia has been the leader of that with their GPUs and what they provide in their GPUs with their AI. So obviously, hype is going to follow on that train. And I do feel like there's so much hype that it covers up some of the potential issues of AI in general that so many like big names, like even like Jensen Huang is also like making like a lot of like statements about the potential dangers of AI. But since like there's a lot of hype and FOMO around I feel like it's kind of being like a little bit like ignored. But if this were to be the case, like in the future, I think it would definitely not be a very good thing. Could potentially haunt us in a really bad way. So I think we need to like I guess like limit the hype around AI and like I guess like also like call to attention some of its like potential misuses, so we kind of like ensure that those like it doesn't really happen, right? Because like AI, there's a lot of things we can do with AI, and in we haven't actually used AI to its full potential yet. We know we can do a lot with AI, but there's definitely things that more things that we can do with it, and just because of that, it's that also like contributes to like what I've said pretty much throughout this entire episode, that AI is really hard to predict. And for that reason, I think, and even though like a lot of hype is like going towards the good trends of AI, we don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like FOMO is kind of playing a role in like maybe not necessarily like Nvidia's growth, but like the entire like the rest of the stocks in kind of that industry. Because I guess I think people think that like if they didn't buy into Nvidia early enough, they're trying to find the next company also in the similar space that could go crazy like Nvidia, but you're really not like basing that off any like solid research or guidance that the other companies have. And we've really seen that with like this is a company called like Super Micro Computer. They've like over the past 3 months they've went up to like 227%. And they've been super volatile too. So it's just like I guess investors are trying to find that new thing that's gonna try to make them a whole lot of money, but you never really know. Like we said, it's very, very possible that it's just a crazy bubble that could pop at any moment. And yeah, but that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us, and we hope to see you back next week for our next episode.